This is the thebisfor podcast, and I'm your host, Bria Villa. Hey y'all, welcome back to the thebisfor podcast. I am your host, Bria Villa, and I am so excited for today's topic because it is one that I think that we all deal with. Me, myself, personally, I struggle with this one. And I want to actually talk through it, define it, talk about the ways that I've helped overcome it, help myself overcome it. And that is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. She's rude, okay? Imposter syndrome, she is a rude girl. I don't like her. She pops up when I don't want her around. I don't even realize when she's popping up. I'm like, what are you doing here? But we're going to talk about her. And we're going to talk about her, why she is, who she is, Miss Imposter Syndrome. And we're going to talk about ways to combat it. So today, the B is for belonging. Because what imposter syndrome tells us so often is that we don't belong. And I'm here to tell you that you do. You belong in every single freaking room that you show up in. Okay? But we're going to talk about why we feel like we don't sometimes. So we're going to go through a little exercise first. Okay? Y'all know the little put a finger down challenge? We're doing that. And I want you to follow along with me and hold 5 fingers up. Okay? Put a finger down if you've ever had the thought process, I don't belong here, I'm not enough, I'm not good, cool, smart, qualified enough. Okay? I just put a finger down. If you are not watching on YouTube, go there sometime, But if you are listening, I just put a finger down. All right. Now, put a finger down if you've ever thought my opinion doesn't matter. Definitely. Okay, I've definitely thought this. So I'm putting a finger down. Put a finger down if you feel like, oh, my experience is not worth sharing. People couldn't relate to me. I just put a finger down. If you listen to my last podcast episode, I literally almost didn't start this podcast because I felt like, oh, my experience isn't worth sharing. Imposter syndrome. Okay, now put a finger down if you feel like you've thought before, everything has been done already. My idea, not that good because somebody's already done it or they've done it better than me. I just put another finger down. And last one, put a finger down if you've ever thought, I don't deserve the good things that happen to me. I have all 5 fingers down right now. Okay? That last one will really just hit you like a right hook to the cheek. That last one, the amount of times that I have thought that I don't deserve the good things that happen to me. I actually got a story for y'all on that one. But if you have more than 3 fingers down, honey bunny, those thoughts are imposter syndrome. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you realize it cognitively in the moment, like, oh, these thoughts are not just doubt. They are literally imposter syndrome. It is me thinking that I don't belong here, that I shouldn't be in this room, that I am not good enough, that I am not qualified enough. Like, that is all imposter syndrome. So the thing about imposter syndrome is it shows up obviously when you least expect it. It shows up in times that you're trying to make either important decisions or you have good things going for you. If you worked really hard, you start to see your success. It all starts to creep in like the highlight moments of your life. And so I want to actually define it because I think giving it a name, describing what it is very important. That way we can figure out how to tackle it. I am actively working on this, like I said, so you're going on this journey with me. But imposter syndrome is defined as the persistent inability to believe that one's successes is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Yeah. I know you've experienced that because I have. I definitely have. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me and how I really have experienced imposter syndrome and why I'm actually talking about it today. So when I first started in my career, I was in a sales role in a corporate company, and I was the only Latin woman in my office, and one of the very few in the company in my role. And honestly, just already didn't feel like I belonged. Now, granted, imposter syndrome, there's a certain ceiling that we put on ourselves in our minds, but we also cannot ignore the ceiling that society has put on some of us. And so I know that people of color, women specifically, experience imposter syndrome very, very often, especially in the corporate space, but that's also because the corporate space was not designed by us or for us, okay? But we're talking about just like the personal glass ceiling that we put on ourselves. So I already felt a little bit of that, a sense of a lack of belonging, right? And then I started gain a lot of success. So I won a multi-million-dollar project, managed it from top to bottom, hired 400 people to help support this project. I was working 12, 13-hour days for 2 months straight. I was working weekends in order to make this project successful. I'm interviewing people in English. I'm interviewing people in Spanish. I'm navigating stakeholder relationships. I'm hiring people. When people aren't performing, I'm firing people. Like, I am doing so much work to like grow this success or grow this program per se. And success came from it. So being that I had this large program and in the type of sales environment that I was in, the size of the program warranted more commission for me, which meant more money coming into my pocket. Okay. And I started to, quite honestly, make a lot of money, right? Like, I was making well into six figures. I made $750,000 by 24 years old, right? So like, I'm making a lot of money, and I'm making a lot of money fast. And I start to go through this entire crisis in my mind of like, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this money. I don't deserve the growth that it's gotten me in the company. So I'm getting promoted quickly. I'm having high level conversations with C-suite executives. I'm being recognized. I'm winning awards. And I'm just feeling like I don't deserve it. I'm feeling like, oh, this was just luck. Or I don't know. I don't think that I actually, like, did I work hard for this? Should I be receiving this? And I started to question and doubt myself a lot of like, am I actually qualified? Am I truly worth the success that I've gained? Like, do I amount to it? And it really started to mess with me. Like, I started to have so much self-doubt. I was showing up into meetings with stakeholders that I used to be super confident with before, and then starting to feel like more meek, and started to feel like, oh, I don't have enough expertise to give guidance on this, or I don't have enough experience to make these decisions. And it's like, why? Why don't you? Like, Bria, hello, girl, look what you just did. I just finished saying that I freaking worked 12, 13-hour days for 2 months straight, that I'm doing all the things. And I'm sitting here thinking that I don't deserve it, or that I didn't work hard for it. And like, that doubt has lived with me. Like, to this day, this was years ago, right? And to this day, I'll have people in the company come up to me and say like, oh my gosh, like, remember this, remember that, when you won that award and all this stuff. And I get so like in a shell, and I'm like, oh, thanks, like, appreciate it. Or like, oh, like, that was just luck. Or like, I got really lucky. And it's like, girl, you did not get lucky. You worked dang hard for that. Real hard for that. And I just like completely doubted myself. And so all that to say is And again, here I am doing it. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds so cocky. And it's like, no, like that is the truth. That is what happened. Okay. There's no denying it. Right. And that was hard work. I did work hard. And I feel as though we have this doubt all the time of like, oh, we have to water ourselves down, or we can't be too much, or the success that we gain, like we have to be really, really humble about it. And I do think humility is important. Humility is certainly important, and that's something that like I try to live by, but it doesn't mean that you didn't do these things, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to water down the impact that you had, because you had it and it is important. And I think all that to say is that was actively how imposter syndrome was showing up in my life and still shows up in my life. And so I want to talk through just like how we navigate it. So when we're starting to experience this imposter syndrome, how do we, like, one, even know that it's happening, first of all? And second of all, I want to ensure that like we know how to mitigate it. So stop it from happening, or at least like interrupt our brains when we're starting to think, oh, I'm having imposter syndrome and it is really kicking in for me right now. So talking about how to combat it, and I wrote a few things down. So first and foremost, you have to call it out, right? So like you have to get to a point in your brain where you're like, wait. I'm sitting here, I'm doubting myself so much. I'm having those thoughts that I just mentioned, that I'm not good enough, or I'm not cool enough to do this, or I don't have the experience, or who's going to want to listen to me. Like when you're starting to have these thoughts, catch yourself, right? Like that negative self-talk, that doubt, call it out. And literally in your brain say, I am having imposter syndrome. Like these thoughts are not me. These thoughts are imposter syndrome, and it's kicking in. Go through moments and like take time to reflect on moments that you've doubted yourself, and then like own when it's shown up for you. So the story I just told, me even starting this podcast, like right now, sitting in this moment, like I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest, because that is reality. But to counteract it, start to write down some of your accomplishments and brag on yourself. Like if you did it and you know it's the truth and you know you worked hard for it, brag on yourself on paper. Like you don't have to sit here and post this brag sheet. Okay. You don't have to tell all the social media and the whole entire world, like, hey, I'm that girl, even though you are. I'm that girl, I'm that guy, I'm that person, whatever, whoever you are listening. You don't have to announce it to everybody, but you should announce it to yourself and be like, okay, I did this. These are the things I think I don't deserve, but here are the things that I did to earn them, right? Like write them out. And then practice that like positive self-talk of like, I do deserve this. Some things, by the way, we deserve just because. You don't have to earn it. There's nothing that you should do to warrant it. Some things we just deserve. I believe all humans deserve love. I believe we deserve peace. I don't think that there's things that we have to do in order to get those things, but that's another topic for another time. But practice thinking about the moments where you feel like, oh, I didn't earn that, I didn't deserve that, I'm not the right person for it, and practice literally saying why you are. Practice it. Like write it down, say it in the mirror, say it to yourself, say it, whatever, but practice it. And also be okay with failure. This is advice to myself. Okay. Because I hate failing. I literally hate it. It gives me like a visceral reaction in response when I fail, because I'm so terrified of disappointing people. I'm terrified mainly of disappointing people that I care about and that I love. And so for me, when I fail, I also am terrified of like disappointing myself. And I think that should be the most important thing is I'm not going to make everybody happy. I am going to disappoint some people, but I don't want the person I disappoint most to be myself. And so like there will be moments that you fail, right? And it is okay You just have to learn to be okay with failure. Although I hate it, and I am literally talking to myself right now, like the only way that you're going to be able to grow and learn and develop and be the best version of yourself is if you fail and you learn from it. Like you have to be okay with failure. And so I might mess up a few times on this podcast, okay? I might say some things that I didn't mean to say or whatever, but that is going to cause a certain level of growth that I know that I'm going to need. And it doesn't mean that I am less qualified. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't be doing this. It doesn't mean that I'm not that girl, okay? I make mistakes. I am human. And I just got to let that be. So be okay with failure. And if you're not going to give yourself permission to fail, I right now am giving you permission to fail. It is okay to fail. It's what you do with the failure that's the most important. Failure is inevitable. That is life. How you learn from it, how you come back from it is so important. And it'll also help you mitigate imposter syndrome down the road because you are going to not only fail, but you're going to get back up. You're going to trust yourself. You're going to trust yourself. And then you're going to stop doubting yourself when the opportunities present themselves for you to succeed. And you'll stop thinking so much about, oh, I don't deserve this, or I shouldn't be in this room, or I'm not qualified. No, because you trust yourself now. Okay. So things that I've done to actually reframe this mindset. So, it is hot in here today. Things that I've done to help reframe this mindset is I've started doing these affirmations when I notice myself having imposter syndrome or when I start to feel like, oh, I shouldn't be here or whatever the case is, some of the things that I just mentioned. So reframe. Here are a few things that I want you to practice saying to yourself. Write them down. So if you're listening or if you're watching, take a second to like write a few of these down just because I think they're so helpful. Pull up your notes app on your phone, get a little Post-it with a pen and write it down if you feel like that's going to be easier for you. But I want you to write these things down. And then when you're actually having imposter syndrome, go back to them and use them because they work. I am not kidding. Like this morning when I was getting ready for this podcast, I started saying affirmations to myself and I literally went through this list and started saying some of these things so that I would not or try to help mitigate imposter syndrome in doing this freaking podcast. Okay. So first is I can leverage my existing skills. Period. I can confidently fail forward. Give yourself permission to fail. I am capable of earning respect. You may not always have respect in every single room that you walk in, and that is okay, but you are capable of earning it. You are capable of earning it. If you have respect for yourself, you are always capable of earning it. I can learn how to do this. I may not know everything. I know I don't know everything, but you can learn it. Like you can literally learn it. And that's on growth mindset, which we may talk about very soon, by the way. But I can learn how to do this. If I don't know it, I can learn how to do it. This is normal. Every person experiences this. I am worthy of good things. Like, please write that down. This is normal. Every person experiences this. I am worthy of good things. This opportunity wouldn't be here unless I deserved it. That's a big one. So I feel like so often I'm like, I have an opportunity presented in front of me and I question myself. I'm like, am I ready? Like, can I do this? Do I have the skill set? Have I learned enough to be able to take on this opportunity? But you know what? It would not be in front of me if I wasn't ready. It would not. And maybe I'm not ready, but I'm going to get ready because it's in front of me now. Right? So make sure that you tell yourself this opportunity wouldn't be here unless I deserve it. Next is this vision wouldn't be mine if I wasn't capable. Ooh, that is a good one. That's how I felt about this podcast. I was like, ooh, should I do this? Am I able to do it? Yes, because the vision wouldn't be mine if I wasn't capable. Then it is no coincidence that I've made it this far. You have gone through so many hard things and you've gotten through all of them, and that's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence either that you are listening to this podcast talking about this thing, because you know that there's something in you that deserves good things and something in you that is capable. Okay? So like you wouldn't have made it this far if you weren't capable. I trust myself with new experiences, and confidence is the willingness to try. Like, you don't have to have it perfect. I don't have to have it perfect. I'm not about to show up on any single one of these podcasts perfect, but I have the willingness to try. Confidence is the willingness to try. So I may fail, like I said, but I'm going to fail forward. And I hope y'all are gracious when I do fail. Like, be kind. I'm a human, please. Jesus. But confidence is the willingness to fail. So some advice that I got years ago, I hope y'all wrote those down, by the way. I'm going to check notes later. But something that, or a piece of advice that I got years ago that I think is so valuable, and I actually started like saying this to myself often, especially when there were opportunities coming up for me. And I started to tell other people too, and I said this at the beginning of the podcast, so I got a little ahead of myself, but the best advice I got was walk into every single room as if you are invited, because you are. You would not be going into that room if you weren't invited, whether or not you were actually firsthand invited, like, hey, join. But there is something about you that is going to add value to that room. So own it. Like, walk into the room as if you were invited. Walk into the room as if everybody is waiting on you to step in there. You have a perspective, you have an idea, you have a thought process, you have an innovative way of thinking, you have a creative mind that's going to take something in that room to the next level. Or you're going to bring peace to someone, you're going to inspire someone. Like, we all have one thing that is very unique about us, and it's the fact that we are ourselves. And there is no one on this planet like you. Like, no one on this planet like you. And so you are in a room for a reason. Take up space. Take up space and own who you are. I'm owning who I am right now. I'm a little crazy, but I'm me. And I feel like I really started to learn this, especially in my experience in the corporate space. I remember I was preparing for a really big meeting with my entire C-suite, and I had never been in a meeting with that high level of executives before who want my expertise on something, or at least invited me to the room to help share some information. And I, in preparation for that meeting, was starting to have just a lot of, again, imposter syndrome, self-doubt. I was like, every single person in here has been in the workforce for longer than I've been alive, or for about the amount of time that I've been alive. None of them have my background, look like me, talk like me, have experiences that I have. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the only person in this room, like with this mindset, with this look, with this vibe, with this energy, with this perspective. And at first I was like, ooh, that's scary because I'm going to be the only. But then I flipped it in my mind and I was like, no, there is no one else in this room like me. And that is my superpower. Like, that is what I'm going to bring to the table. And it's wild because I go into that meeting. It was like a 2.5 hour long meeting, very high stakeholders in that meeting who literally like could snap their fingers and have me out of a job in a second if I did not do well. Granted, that's not the environment that I live in. Like, my organization and like the leaders that I work with are actually very people centric and they really care about their people. So I don't work in a toxic work environment, thank goodness. But I go into that room, we're in there for about 2.5 hours. And the whole time beforehand, I was thinking like, okay, at what points am I going to jump in? Like, when am I going to add my voice and my perspective? And then I just sat back and I was like, just trust yourself. Like, just trust yourself, trust your intuition, know when you're going to add value, and only speak up when you do have things that are valuable to say. Don't just talk to talk. Okay? Rule of thumb. But I leave that conversation and literally 3 of our C-level executives reach out to me afterwards and tell me how impressive I was, how my expertise was so valued, that I brought perspective that was very unique, that they hadn't thought of, and that I carried myself very well, and that they want to actually continue to have these conversations on a monthly basis with me. And I went into that room at first being like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I have not had a conversation like this ever, right? I have not helped lead strategic direction for a multi-billion-dollar company ever. I mean, I had for like some of my clients, but I guess more specifically, like this setting with these people, with these stakeholders. Like, I hadn't helped drive a message with them before. And you have to know your audience, you have to know your stakeholders. So like it was high stakes for sure. And I'm so glad that I took the time beforehand to like do some of the things that I just was explaining to y'all, so that I can make sure that I can show up my best self and also add so much value without doubting who I am. So I did some of those tips. It worked out for me. And I hope that you like see in this journey that like, okay, one, I experienced this stuff too. And two, you feel at least like you have more tips, tools, tricks to be able to tackle imposter syndrome. So all in all, a few notes that I want to leave y'all with is show up as her, show up as him, show up as them, show up as who you want to be, because you already are. It's already in you. Don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt the person that you are, the value that you have. And if you start to, now you have tips to be able to tackle that. Remember that it's progression over perfection. We are not perfect. You are not perfect. I am not perfect, but progress is key. 1% better, and just knowing that like you have space to grow, and life is all about growth and a continual journey of growth. And then last is you belong here. You belong here, you belong everywhere, and you belong anywhere that you choose to be. If it's a room that you're getting invited to, if it's somewhere that you're showing up to, you belong in that space. Whether it feels like it or not, you belong. Remind yourself that you belong. And you belong here. You belong here listening to this podcast. You belong here having this conversation with me. I hope that some of this information just like felt valuable to you, because I know that this is a journey that I'm actively like going on and trying to navigate imposter syndrome so much. And I just want to share this with you, but you belong here. And I think it's really important that you feel that you belong. And some spaces may not make you feel that way, but create a space in your mind to make you feel that way. That being said, that pretty much is it. Like, we know what imposter syndrome is. We know how to combat it. We know how to reframe it. It's an ongoing journey, right? So like, you're not going to listen to this podcast and then tomorrow be like, I'm never having imposter syndrome again, because it doesn't work like that. You got to practice every day. But if there are times that you're like, oh, I need a refresher, or I need to like recenter myself and make sure that I'm like not thinking myself into this negative spiral, come back and listen to this. Like, the tips will always be here. Reach out to me. Talk to me about the experiences that you're having. I would love to hear them. And make sure that you just like stay up to date on the different things that I'm going to be posting and coming out with. But I appreciate you so much for tuning in today. You just took a good amount of time out of your day to not only like develop and learn for yourself, but also just to like share this moment with me. And I have so much gratitude for that. And I cannot wait until the next episode. We're going to be talking about some real interesting stuff. I may or may not have dropped a little teaser in this. But I'm really excited to have y'all next week. So make sure that you tune in, and I hope that you have a great day.